Salutations, respected viewers. This is George from Ireland. You can see a very large cow behind me. Well, I'm on Arbat Street in Moscow. This cow is advertising moo moo. Moo, cow says moo, get it? Which is a buffet restaurant. Anyway, Arbat Street is one of the most historic and characterful streets in Moscow. Pedestrian-only streets, been that way since the early 90s at least. Anyway, and there are so many restaurants here, about 20 souvenir shops. There's Shashlik, one I go to very regularly. Fantastic sort of Russian stroke Central Asian restaurant. There are many these luxury watch shops and loads of souvenir shops, about 20 of them. So they're all selling things which are a bit priced over the odds. So shop around carefully, you might get a much better deal a bit down the street. And here is a statue to a Georgian poet, Bulat. I can't remember his surname. And although he wrote entirely in the Russian language, and people often stand on the pedestal behind me declaiming his verses or reciting other poesy. So as you can see, it's a passeggiata for well-heeled people. That's what they stand on. I've only ever seen young men doing this. And anyway, so there are loads of pubs and there's some live music venues not far away. Well, you can't really make it out from this distance, but behind me you might see some aquamarine bit on the front of the building, and that's Ulysses, Irish pub as in James Joyce's novel. So it's not cheap around here, that's the one thing. When I was here in 1994, this is where the Occidentals would hang out, and sometimes you get buskers, street performers. Send a postcard from just behind here, the post office you're about to see. And we're going to see yet another, that's the post office, and we're going to see yet another souvenir shop. So selling World Cup trinkets, t-shirts, caps, little balls, matryoshkas, those are the dolls, one fits inside another, which fits inside another, and so forth. Distinctively Russian things, the furry hats, the dresses occasionally, ice hockey tops, fridge magnets, postcards, and there'll be yet another one. So many distinguished people lived here. Now we're about to see the Hard Rock Cafe. I don't know where the original Hard Rock Cafe was, but this one, like other ones, have got some rock memorabilia in there. So I can't remember whose things they've got, whose jacket and the guitar of which person and all the rest of it. So there's live music in there occasionally. There's a jazz club not far away, so there's loads of entertainment around here. There's several theatres on the street, so it would take 15 minutes at least to walk up and down it. Anyway, so I come here very frequently. It really lifts the spirit seeing such a fine place, you see. Now, here we're about to see, is it the fourth souvenir shop we passed already? And they're all selling much the same merchandise. And then we're going to see the fifth one, Skazka, as in fairy tales. And then a lot of these stalls selling books, often antiquarian books, obviously only in Russian. I've never purchased one actually. I've been very idle, not forced myself to read a proper book in Russian. Anyway, and then we're going to come to Pushkin's house, who was actually from St. Petersburg, but he spent quite some time here, both here on Arbat Street, or indeed near Pushkinskaya Square as it now is. And he also went to Lomonosov University, and he lectured there just a little bit. It's not that close to here. So this was his Moscow house. And you can go into it, it's open to the public, closed on Mondays. Almost all museums and art galleries are closed on Mondays in this country. So he is really the father of the modern Russian language. It was closer to Old Church Slavonic in those days. What about Alexander Sergeyevich Pushkin? Well, his great-grandfather was Gannibal, was from Ethiopia. Gannibal, as in their pronunciation of Hannibal. Okay, so he didn't spend very long here. He was here for a bit of February 1831, and then you can see his somewhat African features, I think rather exaggerated. He's actually only 1/8 African. I very much like this mint green colour that it's done in, and there are quite a few historic houses are like that. So you can see obviously he was very well off to have such a fine house in Moscow, and obviously, as I said, it's not only his primary residence. So there are loads of artifacts associated with him there, and there's a lady in every room there to explain a bit more, and there's a card in English giving you more information about the life of Russia's most celebrated poet. That's why there's Pushkin House in London, the Russian Cultural and Linguistic Institute. And indeed there's a statue of him over on the other side of the street, which we'll go and see in a moment. He was married to Natalia Goncharova, I hope I pronounce it correctly, and they had several children. So she was 18 when they got married. He was several years older. He died at the age of 38, if I got that right. So a lot of people blame her for this incalculable loss to Russian literature because of her coquettish behavior. She was alleged to be having an extramarital affair with another man, so that being the age, the 1830s, he challenged this man to a duel because his honor had to be satisfied, and Pushkin was killed in a duel. So that was that. There she is. So they had several children, as I said, and they have many descendants down to this day, and there are hundreds of their descendants living. And if you go into his house, you can see a photo where they've gathered hundreds of Pushkin descendants. But I don't think any of them have achieved great distinction. You know, nothing grows in the shadow of a great oak tree, as was it Randolph Churchill? And anyway, you can see all these artists. They are selling their paintings here on the street. The people even who'll draw your caricature for not very much. Alexander Herzen's house, not very far from here, over there, street parallel. Must go and film outside that one. So the architecture here is quite distinctive. It's a little bit individual. It's human scale. Then there's anything above 5 stories high on this street. Oh well, sorry, I stand corrected. Look at the one further. Perhaps nothing over 8 stories high. So it's different. That's what I like about it. Anyway, and then we come to a bit of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which was built shortly after the Second World War, one of the 7 sisters. So you'll see behind me there, whoa, look how high that is. It's like Gotham City. So darker grey stone near the bottom. Right at the top you see lighter grey stone, and presumes it was built in 2 very different phases. So emphasizing the might of the state and just how they bounced back from the Second World War, despite the devastating losses. They were still able to build these gargantuan edifices. You thought there might have been other priorities, as some people were still suffering very badly from the consequences of the war. But anyway, the glory of the state was top priority. So turning off Arbat is called that. It's thought to be because they traded with the Arabs here, or there's another claim. Well, sometimes I call it Stari Arbat, as in old Arbat, to avoid confusion with Novi Arbat, which is parallel to it, which is a much broader modern street, which is that away. But that's that. Strictly speaking, is Stari Arbat I was on. Anyway, we're coming to the metro. If you want to come here, you come to Arbatskaya metro, or indeed Smolenskaya metro, which I'm about to show you, which is behind me. This is the rear of the station, so that's a distinctively Soviet side of the station. And there are loads of police around here, you'll be very safe. But at the front of the station, they've got these various friezes showing victories down the years. 1612, defeat of the Poles. I think that was just before Mikhail Romanov took over, founded the dynasty. Then, 1812, defeat of the French. 1917, the October Revolution. And finally, 1945, victory over Germany. Okay, well, I'll switch it off now as we're well and truly off Stari Arbat.